Hi everyone. Today we'll show you how to make animations using a combination of Sketch and Principle on the example of onboarding screens. Comparing Principle and After Effects is useless as these are fundamentally two different tools. In fact, there are no restrictions in After Effects, so you can freely fulfill all of your fantasies. But for making something simple and linear, like in our case, it is better to use Principle. This will save you a lot of time. Working on a turnkey project, as a rule, we use Principle and After Effects at different stages. For example, these are the animations in After Effects that we make during the branding stage, and Principle is often used to create interactive prototypes and demonstrate simple animations inside the application. There are some really incredible Principle animations out there that look beautiful, but really aren't that hard to create. Ultimately, they are all done using linear or rotational motion and creative layering. Is it difficult to learn how to use Principle? Not really. If you know how drivers, components, and the animation timeline work, then you know Principle. Okay, let's start. I start by creating an artboard in Sketch and filling it with blue color. The title is made using the SK Modernist font. Next, I'm adjusting the font size and putting the title in the center of the artboard. I'm drawing a square with dimensions of 185 by 185 pixels. To round the corners, I select Round Corner 40 pixels. Now, I'm changing the title text and editing the letter spacing. Adding the logo and skip button. Okay, now I'm adjusting the final colors by creating a rectangle so that it isn't done through the artboard. Now let's create the next button through the shape of the square and round off the corners to the maximum to make a circle. All that's left is to align it in the center. Adding an illustration to make the screen less boring. This one is actually a GIF from Giphy. I'm selecting two layers and clicking the mask so that the illustration is cropped along the borders of our rectangle. Now I need to duplicate the artboard for the next onboarding screen. For this screen, I will change the background color. I am using another illustration here and writing another headline. On the first screen, I am changing the color of the next button to the background color from the second screen, also creating another headline. Sleek. Duplicating another screen, again, repeating the actions with a color change. Here, the background is white, so the color of the other elements will also need to be changed accordingly. adding the third illustration to the mask and aligning it. Oops, I noticed that the next icon turned out to be a bit uneven. No worries, let's correct it quickly. Note that it needs to be replaced on the other screens too. Let's do a final check of the ready onboarding screens. What do you think? Good enough for the animation stage. I am now selecting the first artboard and opening Principal. To import the artboard, I'm clicking the Import button, then selecting the Import selected artboards. Then, selecting the next button, type Command-G to create a group. For this group, I need to select the page type. Now in the preview window, you can check that the circle is responding to the swipe. Nice. Selecting the entire group and expanding the borders. Somewhere up to 2000 pixels wide should be enough here. This will be the zone for the future swipe and the time during which the transition to the next screen will take place. I am creating a rectangle inside the group. Setting the transparency of this rectangle to 0%. Now to the driver's panel. That's an analog of the timeline with keyframes as in After Effects. Some of you might be familiar with it already. Adding the keyframes center X, center Y, width, and height.
Shifting it by 1000 frames and creating keyframes here. Selecting the last center X keyframe and setting it to a position of plus 1000 from the current one so that the circle remains in the center of the screen.
Now let's select the circle and increase its borders to 36,000 in width and height. Then, I will move it so that the center of the edge of the object is in the same place as that of the small circle, and increase the rounding with a margin of up to 40,000. While increasing the circle to the maximum size, it is necessary that it opens almost to a flat line, so that's what I did. And you need to make the same circle on the left and paint it blue. At the moment when the pink circle becomes as large as possible, a substitution will take place and the effect will be created that the circle turns inside out and returns to its original position. To do this, I hide the pink circle by adding opacity to the keyframe. Making the second keyframe, I set the opacity to 0%. Duplicate the circle by pressing Command-D. Moving it to the left and aligning it on the edge of the pink circle. Changing color to blue. And I'm making it appear out of transparency at the moment when the pink circle disappears. For the blue circle, I am doing the same thing as for the pink circle, adding the center X and center Y keyframes, as well as width and height. adding the keyframe so that the background color changes from blue to pink at the moment when the circles are replaced. Reducing the distance between keyframes to a minimum. Now, if we'll check, we'll see that the circles are replaced and the background color is too. Now we need to make the blue circle decrease. Moving the group with circles down to the background layer so that the circles do not overlap other elements. Moving to the 2000th frame and resizing the blue circle to 92 pixels. This is the initial circle size according to the design. The circle was outside the artboard and I'm returning it to its place. Now look at what happened. It doesn't work. What's wrong then? The problem was in the layer that turned out to be the outside of the group. We need to return it to the group and now our effect works as it should. At the beginning of the movement, the circle increases too quickly. Let's add intermediate keyframes to fix this and move them to the right. All good now. We will do the same for the blue circle, but at the end of the movement. The main effect is ready. See? Easy. I ended up adding another intermediate state for each circle to make the animation look smooth. If you swipe the screen insufficiently enough, the circle returns to its original position. Now let's update the content for the second screen and animate the title with the illustration. I'm returning to Sketch, selecting the second screen and importing it into Principal. From this screen, I will only need the title and illustration. I am copying them and pasting them onto the main screen. Then selecting the first title with an illustration and creating a group. Adding Center X keyframe and one more keyframe on the 2000th frame. Shifting the group to the left. Now look at the result. You can animate GIFs, but Principal doesn't support GIF format, unfortunately. In order to do this, open Adobe Media Encoder. I'm selecting GIFs, dragging and dropping them, and converting to MP4. Voila! The ready-made MP4 is uploaded to Principal. Now I am resizing them and creating groups for each illustration. You need to check the Clip Sublayers checkbox, which will allow you to crop the picture according to the principle of the mask, rounding the edges, putting them in place of the old illustrations. Deleting old static illustrations, don't need them anymore. Checking in preview. All that remains is to make the blue circle change its color to white. To do this, we make it decrease to 0 and another circle of white color appears in its place. Let's go straight to it. Changing the last keyframe from 92 to 0 and shifting down a bit. Duplicating the circle and painting it white. Adding the Center X keyframe and the key to change the scale. And finally, making the scale to be from 1 to 0 and making the circle move from the left to the center using the keyframe Center X. All done. As you can see, everything is very convenient and easy to learn. Principal provides the perfect balance between simplicity and convenience, giving people everything they need to create realistic prototypes without the need for coding. And it can be tested in real time on your device. Rapid prototypes play a vital role to understand how things work, but many of them never see the light of day because of the lack of cross-functional perspective. A designer cannot convince the idea to a tech team unless it has a realistic approach to implement it. Unfortunately, we rarely see the beautiful interactive application. See you again soon.